rabbi and a priest and a minister are all sitting around. They're good friends. They're talking about, is this live? Then I will stop that joke. I thought I'd entertain you while we're waiting. Okay. Just wanted to. Huh?
Maybe you can tell it after.
I'll tell it after. I'll finish the joke.
Terribly sorry.
I know while we were waiting, I thought I'd lighten it up a little.
Were you telling jokes?
I started to tell a joke, and then I realized
Lawyer jokes?
we're live. So, clergy joke. Everybody good? White balance for anybody? Newcomers? Okay. Tell me when. Or do you want to shut the door? All right, good morning. Thank you for coming. My name is Irwin Zalkin, IRWIN ZALKIN. I'm the senior partner of the Zalkin Law Firm. We're here in San Diego and New York and Colorado. We have asked you here today to help explain to you what it means for victims now that the Boy Scouts of America National Organization has filed a bankruptcy in Delaware. From my own experience, I was appointed by the district court here in San Diego, Judge Leo Pappas, as liaison counsel on behalf of 144 victims to represent them in the San Diego Diocese bankruptcy filing in 2007. And having been through that experience, I have some familiarity with what victims should expect from the bankruptcy that's been filed by the Boy Scouts National Organization. So from the Boy Scouts standpoint, and let me make it clear that the only Boy Scout entity, and we'll talk about how the Boy Scouts are organized, that has filed for bankruptcy protection is the Boy Scouts of America National Organization out of Texas. All right. So what does that mean? What happens when a bankruptcy gets filed? First of all, this is a reorganization bankruptcy, a Chapter 11 bankruptcy. It's an effort by the Boy Scouts to stop all of these lawsuits or potential lawsuits that they are going to are facing and will likely be facing in various state courts around the country, especially California, New York, New Jersey, Hawaii, where we have what we call window legislation. There have been changes in the law that have opened a window of opportunity in these various states for victims to file lawsuits against not only the Boy Scouts, but the Catholic Church and other organizations where their claims were barred by the old statutes of limitations. So there's this new opportunity that these states are legislating for victims. And in part, that has driven the Boy Scouts to file a bankruptcy because the first thing they want to do is stop all of these lawsuits. So when you file a bankruptcy, the first thing is that you get an automatic stay of all of these various state court proceedings. So instead of having lawsuits going on in possibly 50 different states in the country, they're now going to be forced into filing claims within the bankruptcy court in the state of Delaware. And so from the Boy Scout standpoint, it's moving and shifting all of these cases into one venue. The other advantage for the Boy Scouts is that they will ask the court to issue what's called a bar date. And a bar date is essentially a type of statute of limitations that can be shorter and will likely be shorter than many of the state statutes of limitations. So when the court issues a bar date, let me give you an example. In California now, we have this 3-year window where victims who were barred before can bring their cases. The bankruptcy judge in Delaware may just say, well, we're going to have a 1-year bar date, and you're going to have to file your claims within 1 year. So there's a certain urgency now for victims of Boy Scout sexual abuse to file a claim within whatever that bar date is going to be. We don't know yet. That's not something that the court has issued yet. Today is the first day that they're having hearings, and the hearings today are just asking the bankruptcy judge for permission to allow them to use some of their funds to keep their daily operations going. So that's what's happening today. But there will be a bar date issued, and we don't know what that's going to be. The other advantage to the Boy Scouts in some sense is that this now forces the hand of their insurance companies to some extent to make a decision on what the insurance companies will do with respect to covering these claims and providing funds to the Boy Scouts to assist them in creating a pool of money that can be made available through the bankruptcy to pay for these claims of the victims. At some point, those assets will be determined by the bankruptcy judge. What are those assets? And the other side of that, the flip side of the asset part of the bankruptcy, is how are we going to determine what the value is of the claims of each of these victims? That's going to be part of the bankruptcy process, and there's numbers of ways that that is done. In some sense, they may release some cases to go to trial and actually try the cases and get jury verdicts to get sort of a benchmark of what juries might do, and then use those benchmarks as a way of trying to get to a valuation of these claims. Or they might look at what the historical values have been, what has happened in settlements or other jury verdicts in cases like this. It takes some time, and there's different ways that the courts, the bankruptcy court, and the victims will negotiate how to do that. Victims our clients have called many and our Boy Scout clients and said, well, how long is this going to take? Oh my God, this is a bankruptcy, this might take forever. Well, no. Actually, this may actually speed up a resolution of the process. It may. I'm not saying it will, but it may. Because in the state courts, we may have to go litigate some of these cases, and it could take 3 to 5 years with appeals and that sort of thing. This may be a much quicker, shorter process than that. We don't know yet. It's early in the game, and we don't know yet how this is going to unfold. But I'll give you an example. The San Diego Diocese bankruptcy was done in 7 months. And in 7 months, they paid out almost $200 million to 144 victims. We got it done quickly in that case. So it can be done quickly. Now, there's going to be a dispute in this bankruptcy. There's going to be a very, very big dispute in this bankruptcy. The Boy Scout National is the organization that filed the bankruptcy. And the bankruptcy, they specifically did not include their local councils. The way the organization, or way the Boy Scouts are organized, is a very top-down organization. You have the national organization, the National Council, and then you have regions and sections, and then you have the local council. So there's a San Diego local council, there's an Orange County local council, and those councils have assets. Those councils have, in some cases, scouting camps, they have properties, they have buildings, they have assets. Now, the Boy Scouts, when they filed that petition, their petition for bankruptcy, did not include the assets of the national organization. They only included their own assets, and which they've estimated to be between $1 billion and $10 billion. we're going to be arguing in this bankruptcy that the local councils belong to the national organization. We're going to be arguing that the assets of the local council belong to the national. The national has complete control over the local council, almost complete control over the local councils, and what activities they do, how they do it, who can be a scoutmaster, who can be a scout, what uniforms they're going to wear, what badges they have. Their youth protection guidelines are to be enforced through the local councils. They have a tremendous level of control over the local councils, and their bylaws include the local councils as part of the Boy Scout chartered organization. The Boy Scout National has in fact borrowed money and collateralized that money with properties belonging to the local councils. So they're going to have a hard time, in my view, of trying to create this separateness that they would like to create. It's not dissimilar to what the Diocese of San Diego did in their bankruptcy. In their bankruptcy, they claimed that the parishes were separate and apart from the diocese, and they didn't include the assets of the parishes in their filing, their bankruptcy filing, and in their assets until they were forced to through our litigation in the bankruptcy. Once that happened, clearly the amount of assets that they had went up dramatically, which I think will be the case with the Boy Scouts eventually. The other question is whether the stay in bankruptcy that stops lawsuits against the national applies to the local council and to what we call chartered organizations or sponsoring organizations. Almost all of the troops, the Boy Scout units, the troops themselves, are sponsored by some kind of an organization. The Mormon Church was the biggest in the country. The Mormon Church actually used the Boy Scouts as their youth-serving organization for young boys. And so they sponsored a lot of the troops, and a lot of the Lions Club and schools and others sponsored those troops. And in many instances, those organizations may have legal responsibility for the scoutmasters or scout leaders who were perpetrators, because they are the first line of vetting of those perpetrators. Many of those perpetrators actually come from that sponsoring organization and become scout leaders in the scouting program. So there's a lot that needs to be determined in this bankruptcy. The main takeaways are that it's going to stop all of these potential lawsuits or lawsuits that are in place right now against the national. We don't know what's going to happen against, if it will stop the complaints against the local councils and the charter organizations, but that's something that we've got to determine yet in the bankruptcy. But most importantly, is what does this really do for victims? How does this impact victims? And I've asked Mike Hernandez, Robert is his first name, but he goes by Mike. Mike Hernandez is one of our clients, to talk to you folks a little bit about how this makes him feel, what his concerns are, because I think he is representative of what most scouts are feeling right now, most victims of scouting are feeling right now. So with that, Mike, are you?
Want me to stand?
You can stand. Do you like him to sit or stand? Stand. Stand over here. Come on over here.
I've been able to put this in compartments in my head, and every once in a while I open it up, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. 8 years ago, I contacted Irwin because I wanted other people not to go through what I have gone through. I wanted to protect kids, but 8 years ago we were banned or barred from going forward. And Irwin said that he was going to put my name, my number on a piece of paper. And then I haven't heard anything from him until October. He said that there's possibly going to be a new law that's going to lift the statute of limitations. And I appreciate that phone call. I have never talked about this to anybody. I've talked to my dad, and it's the second time I see him cry. I am here because I don't want anybody to hide from bankruptcy, to hide behind it. Like I wanted to protect kids a long time ago, I think the kids need to be protected. And I don't think it's right for anybody to hide behind a bankruptcy to get away with something.
Do you have any questions? Just ask a few questions.
Can you tell us a little bit about what happened to you?
I believe I was stalked. Got invited to, his name was Mr. Falah, to his house, and I was molested there with the 3 other boys. And then on a so-called badge, we went to a river and did a little bit of arrow shooting. Then went out again, you know, there was some group, then I went out again with just by myself, and I was abused again. I feel that he, at one time, wanted to do it again, but I refused to hang out with him. And that caused problems with me, my mom and dad for a long time. They didn't know. Never told them.
All these years later, you can see how it has affected you. How has it affected your entire life?
Anger. It was always controlled. When I was younger, I got in a lot of fights, and it was more about protecting kids from bullies. You know, you're going to pick on him, what you pick on me, and always cried after. But it's always been kind of controlled. I've never talked about it to anybody until I sat down with him in November. But it's just, you know, just keep it in, you know?
Well, this is certainly the best way you can hit them back, certainly.
Yeah, I've thought about it many times, what would happen, you know, and it was good that it didn't come out when I was younger. You know, it was when my dad, you know, he was an officer in the Air Force, and I don't know what had happened. My mom has told me what he would have done, and, you know, who knows, you know. But, you know, it's, like I said, I've always been able to keep it in a compartment, but that compartment has really been an anchor, you know, not something that's good.
So what would you like to see happen?
Justice, accountability, protection.
And what does that look like, the accountability?
I have no idea. Going to jail. No kids getting hurt.
Do you know if the abuser in your case is dead or?
No idea. That question has come to my mind a couple of times of finding him, you know, but it was always not a good thing, you know. And, you know, at that time, you know, just dealing with it has been easier than what could happen.
You mentioned you went to the abuser's house with a couple of other boys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know were the other boys also
No.
assaulted?
No.
You don't know, or they weren't?
Well, I really
Yeah.
don't want to talk about it.
They were.
They were.
Was this in San Diego?
No, it was Merced. My dad was in the Air Force, and the last place he was stationed was Merced. But
One of the things that you may not know, but the Boy Scouts since the 1920s have maintained files on accused perpetrators or known perpetrators within their organization. They're called the ineligible volunteer files, or IV files. They used to call them the perpetrator files. P-files. They've kind of softened that term. They've kept that very quiet, very secret. Some efforts were made in 2012 in a